part 2 of the last class. So we started off with the first Rashi in the Chumash, who Rashi addresses the purpose of the first book of the Torah. So he asked the question, why, he raised the difficulty that why does the Torah begin with creation? And Rashi finds that difficult, and he feels that it should start with a mitzvah. And we discussed last time that it's very important to analyze, when Rashi raises a difficulty, it's very important to analyze it and to try to identify his premise, the premise behind the question, because even if he's going to answer the question and reject the question, essentially, and find the flaw in his thinking, the premise will often still be true. So last time we found this difficult. We found it difficult that what is Rashi asking, being that the creation is such a foundational idea to our faith. Why wouldn't the Torah start with creation? What was Rashi's premise? And we identified a premise with the help of the Maharal, with the Gur Aryeh. We identified that Rashi feels that the Torah is a book of practical instruction, because that's the essential difference between Judaism and other religions, is the idea that we have practices. We're not just faith-based, but we have these practices that Hashem told us to do to celebrate our faith. And therefore, the Torah is a book of practical instruction of mitzvahs, and the Torah should have started with a mitzvah and should not discuss stories. And that's Rashi's question. And his answer is that the purpose of the first book of the Torah is to describe how Hashem created the world, and Hashem can give it to whoever he wants. And that is what gives us the claim to the land of Israel, which we have, and we raise the question, how does that answer Rashi's question? How does that respond? It's still not a mitzvah. So Maharal explains the significance of this idea that the land of Israel belongs to us is not just a territorial reality, but it is the background or the justification for many of the mitzvahs of the Torah, because many, if not most, of the mitzvahs of the Torah require us to own the land of Israel in order to do them. And we gave the examples of the agricultural laws, which only apply in Israel, the sacrificial laws, which only apply in the temple in Israel. And therefore, the Torah needs to predicate all those mitzvahs with this premise that Hashem can give the land of Israel to whoever he wants. That was the Maharal's take on Rashi. Today we're going to hear a different perspective on this Rashi. And remember, Rashi is not making this up. He's getting this from a medrash. The medrash asks the question and gives the answer. So this perspective we're going to hear today, I'm not certain that it agrees with Rashi. We're going to hear today from the Ramban. I'm not certain the Ramban is agreeing with Rashi, or he's giving us an entirely different perspective on this. But both of them are valid perspectives and worth listening to.
What time difference they were living?
So Rashi was 11th century in France. The Ramban was, I believe, the 13th century in Spain. And I mentioned last time that Rashi is the primary commentator on the Torah. He gets first rank. I would say the Ramban gets second rank. He's the next in line.
Ramban.
The Ramban, yeah.
I heard somewhere that Harambam never heard of Rashi. He said, I don't know if I heard it right or not, and because he was 1 century after.
Yeah.
And then he wrote all his things, and then later on, probably Haramban was the one that was just saying, oh, wait a minute. Rashi was there, and then you came, I guess, after that, something like that. I don't know.
I haven't heard that, but that may be. I've never seen the Rambam quote Rashi, so it's possible that he never heard of him. I don't know. But we're referring to the Ramban, two different people.
All right.
By Moshe Nachmanides, or Moshe ben Nachman. So in terms of Chumash commentators, Rashi is number one, and close second is the Ramban. Any conversation on the Chumash starts with Rashi and continues with the Ramban. And the Ramban did a little bit of a different job than Rashi did. Rashi tried to make a word-by-word commentary explaining each, or I should say phrase by phrase maybe, explaining each phrase in the Chumash and trying to resolve all the basic difficulties at the simplest level he could. Whereas the Ramban has more lengthy discussions, and he doesn't go phrase by phrase. He tries to discuss like a whole paragraph at a time and discuss its significance, and he'll quote Rashi and disagree with him or agree with him, explain him. So in this case, first Ramban on the Torah, he is addressing the same medrash that Rashi addresses. He even quotes it in Rashi's name, but he gives us a different perspective on it. So again, the question the Medrash poses is, it's difficult that the Torah begins with creation. Why does the Torah begin with creation? And again, that's hard to understand because creation is so important. The Ramban says, yes, it certainly is important. Creation is the foundation of our faith. It does belong in the Torah. However, it should be expressed in one line. Ramban asserts that when we read this detailed account of creation, we read what happened on the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, we have no idea what we're reading. We're not getting anything out of this. The first chapter of the Torah is full of obscure allusions to deep mystical concepts that we can't understand, or that if we can understand, we're not getting it from here. I'll give you an example. And I'm sure a lot's been written about this, but this is just an example of how the story of creation is not clear just by reading it. On the second day of creation, we read that Hashem takes the water and separates it between lower waters and upper waters. And between those two waters, he puts the sky, referred to in the Torah as Rakia. What does that mean? Lower waters, I guess, is the ocean. That makes sense. There's plenty of water down here. What are the upper waters? Well, there is humidity in the atmosphere, but that's not upper. That begins right above the ground and goes up for several miles. If you look up high enough, you'll see clouds, but those aren't really bodies of water. Those are just, part of the atmosphere. I shouldn't say they aren't bodies of water, but they're not exactly, they're not oceans. And there are clouds down here too. You can have fog. And what is this rakia? What's the sky between us and these upper waters, assuming it is referring to the clouds? Where is there a sky between them? The sky doesn't really exist. It's more just the atmosphere. The word rakia means, by its derivation, would mean a flattened surface. You took some kind of material, flattened it out, that could be called a rakia. In fact, the word rakia or reka is used for the ground also. Roga ha'aretz. And we say in Davening, roka ha'aretz. Same idea. So what's that? Where is there a flattened material surface in the sky? What's it referring to? So clearly there's something deeper here. There's some idea of upper waters, whatever that might mean, and there's some rakia that we don't really know what that is either. These are all deep mystical secrets that the Torah does not reveal to us explicitly. So by reading this chapter, we're really getting nothing. We're not getting any real information. Now I want to give some context to that idea. We know that we have two Torahs. We have the written Torah and the oral Torah. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what that means. It's often thought that Moshe went up on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and he received this book, this written Torah. And then he studied it very carefully. He and his successors until today studied it very carefully and developed this whole oral tradition around it, which they passed on from generation to generation. That's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. Moshe did not receive the written Torah on Mount Sinai, and I can prove it. If he ever read the written Torah, he would not have hit the rock. Right? The Torah says that he hit a rock and he was punished for it, whatever, that's a discussion in itself, what he did wrong there. But he hit a rock, he got punished, he didn't get to the land of Israel, which was a tragedy for him, and he prayed to avert that decree, and he wasn't successful. If he read the Torah, why did he hit the rock? Now, clearly he didn't have the written Torah, at least in its entirety, from day one. So what did he do for 40 days on the mountain? What was he doing up there? The answer is he was receiving the oral Torah. Moshe sat down on the mountain. He says, Va'eshev Bahar. He sat on the mountain and he was taught, Hashem taught him the oral Torah. And it's one of the miracles of the giving of the Torah that he was able to do that in 40 days. Because the oral Torah is huge. The entire corpus of halachic discussions and writings are all included in the oral Torah, as well as the entire corpus of Jewish philosophy and Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah. That's all part of the oral Torah. And the Ramban adds in the introduction to his commentary, all the secrets of creation and all the revelations that the various prophets received about how Hashem runs the world, Moshe received. That's all part of the oral Torah. All that was explained to Moshe, all of these secrets, all this mysticism, all the science of creation, and all of halacha, all of philosophy, was all given to Moshe at Har Sinai as part of the oral Torah. Where does the written Torah come in? Well, we're told in the Torah that when he came down from the mountain, he was instructed to write down something. Doesn't say exactly what he was supposed to write. So some say that refers to part of the written Torah, the part up until then.
That moment.
Others say it was something else, and the written Torah wasn't written then at all. In any case, the written Torah wasn't completed until the last day of Moshe's life. And he didn't write it. It was dictated to him by Hashem. Hashem is the author, and Moshe is the scribe. And it was, on the last day of his life is when he presented the Jewish people with this Torah scroll. And what is the Torah scroll? The Torah, as it's written, is something that only Hashem could have done. It's a book that contains the entire oral Torah in written form. Now, the oral Torah, as we're saying, is vast, it's tremendously vast, but all of it is either explicitly written or hinted to. You can read through the written Torah and you get one level of understanding. Then you read it again and you read it a little more carefully and you examine the exact word choices and the letter choices, the spelling, and the Gemara talks about the little crowns on the letters. Some of the letters have little crowns on top of them written in the Torah scroll, and every detail there hints to some idea in the oral Torah. Some of it is more explicit, some of it is less explicit. But what's important to understand with this is you're not going to understand it just by reading the written Torah. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. It's not that you read the written Torah and then you can figure out what the oral Torah says. It works the other way around. We know the oral Torah. We know it orally. Today a lot of it is written down, but originally we knew it orally. And then you read the written Torah and you study it and you see, oh yeah, it's referring to that idea. This extra letter refers to this concept that we already knew. It would be ridiculous if you look through the Talmud works on this on every page. And it would be ridiculous for us to try to read the written Torah and come up with all those conclusions. They sound sometimes comical if they were all derived from the written Torah, but it's the other way around. The oral Torah exists. We had it. We knew it. It was studied very carefully for centuries. Then the work that they were doing in the Talmud is trying to read that back into the written Torah. And the miraculous nature of the written Torah is that all of that information is contained somewhere in it. Which is possibly why one of the reasons why the written Torah is referred to as Sefer HaBris, the book of the covenant, because the entire covenant, the entire Torah, is hinted to in there somewhere. However, there is a simple reading. You can read through the Torah and gain lessons just by reading it. And there are other nations who have our Bible, have translated it into many languages, and they've become inspired by it. They read it, they get things from it. There is something to be gained by reading the story, even if you don't know the oral Torah. You'll just be missing a lot of different layers of meaning that are in there. However, the first chapter of Bereishis is different. There's nothing in there that we understand. It talks about Hashem creating the world. It talks about a universe before the universe existed, which we can't even imagine what that means to before the universe existed. And it says everything in very terse terms, and it doesn't explain itself. Now, if you do know the oral Torah and you know the Kabbalistic teachings and the various esoteric secrets that are being hinted to here, you'll understand this chapter. But just a reading of it gives you nothing. And therefore, the Ramban asserts it doesn't belong here. Those secrets could be hinted to elsewhere, but the statement, the full chapter of details about creation seems to be superfluous for us. It would suffice to have a one line, Hashem created heaven and earth, period. And we would believe that, and how he did it, who knows? That's how the Ramban explains the question of this medrash. Why does the Torah begin with creation if we're not going to understand it? Good question?
Very good question. So then what you were saying, Moshe Rabbeinu knew all the secrets of the creation and everything?
Yeah.
That's what he was...
All but one.
All but one.
All but one. There's a cryptic line in the Gemara that says there are, I don't know if it's in the Gemara, the cryptic line somewhere that says there are 50 gates of wisdom. And Moshe was given 49. He was missing the last one. And that last one is Hashem. Because Hashem is infinite and we can't comprehend him. We can't comprehend Hashem as he exists himself. We can comprehend how he relates to us. After he decided to create a universe, we can talk about, we can have some inkling of why he did it. We can have some inkling of how he wants us to perceive him. And Moshe understood all that. But that last idea of Hashem himself, the essence of Hashem, that's beyond us, we can't understand that.
So he didn't get that far.
He didn't get that far. And no one ever will. It's beyond our existence to try to think about Hashem in his essence. And Moshe understood this chapter. And today there are people that understand this chapter. If you know the Kabbalah, you can understand this chapter. But just by reading it, there's nothing to be gained in terms of information. If people try to analyze this chapter and they try to read things into it, and where does evolution fit into this first chapter, and where does Big Bang Theory fit into this first chapter? Those are not valid questions. We could discuss what the Torah thinks about those theories, and that's a discussion which I'm not really prepared to have right now, but it could be had. But in terms of what does Genesis say about Big Bang, nothing. We can't read Bereishis and understand that, because, again, these are mystical secrets of how Hashem created the world. So that's the question. Let's move on to the answer. Which, again, the answer that Rashi gave, that the Medrash gave, is that the Bereishis teaches us that Hashem created the world, and he gave it to whoever he wanted to, and therefore we have a right to the land of Israel. So the Ramban explains, and this is a very important concept that he puts in here. He says the idea behind Bereishis, this is my reading of the Ramban. You're welcome to look it up and read it. I'm kind of elaborating a little bit. but I think this is what he's trying to do. The idea behind the book of Bereishis is that the world has a purpose. It's not purposeless. It's not random. There's meaning to creation. There's meaning to history. Everything has meaning. Hashem has a plan. He has a plan for this universe. He did it for a reason, and he wants something out of it. So we read these 6 days of creation. We don't really understand what's going on, but what we do understand is Hashem created this, Hashem created that, Hashem created that, and that kind of gets pushed into the background. And then Hashem says to the universe, let us make man. And man, as he's presented in the Torah, is the centerpiece of creation, the purpose of creation. And Hashem says, he speaks to the man, he speaks to Adam, and he says, I'm giving you this creation, you're going to rule over it. And he gives Adam a place to live. He puts him in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, this paradise. And Adam lives there, but then he sins. And he gets expelled from Gan Eden. And then he has children and grandchildren, all these generations, and then they mess up also. And they get wiped out in the flood. And Noach gets saved. Noach is a tzaddik. Noach is a righteous person, and he gets saved. He goes into the ark and survives the flood. And then his descendants again mess up. They make the tower. They get dispersed all over the land. And in that generation, one person, Hashem finds one person to be faithful to him. And that one person is Abraham. And all the other nations, all the other people of the world who were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, get dispersed. They get dispersed all over the land, and Hashem chooses this one person, this one tzaddik, this one righteous Abraham, and takes him to be the progenitor of the nation that Hashem's going to choose. And to that nation, he gives the land of Israel. Now, people are going to ask, what right do we have to the land of Israel? Well, we do. Look at creation. Look at how Hashem runs the world. And it's not just the first chapter. Look how Hashem runs the world. He created everything. He gives the world to those who believe in him, or those who serve him. And those who don't were rejected. Those who keep his mitzvahs, those who follow his commands, are the ones who Hashem accepts as his servants. And he gives them the land of Israel. And that's very important to us. It's very important for our understanding, first of all, of why we were chosen, also why we were given the land of Israel, but most importantly, and this goes back to this the Maharal that we mentioned last time, why do we have this land? What do we have to do to deserve it? What does this land mean to us? And the answer is, the land of Israel means that we have to serve Hashem. We have to do the mitzvahs. So, like the Maharal, the Ramban is saying, Bereishis is, the entire Torah is predicated on Bereishis, but not just the mitzvahs that are in Israel, are only done in Israel. All the mitzvahs. Because we're being told here that the only way we can have our land, the only way we can have our nationhood, the only way we can survive in this world is by keeping the Torah, is by serving Hashem. And that's the purpose of Bereishis.